Okay, good morning, everyone. It's time to start LCA4Regions project webinar. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see that so many of you have with us today. We will start today's webinar, or this webinar actually lasts for 3 days. We have divided sessions for this Tuesday and tomorrow, and then last session on Thursday. Today's session will focus on policies, and we have a good selection of presentations for today. Before we start any further, although I know that most of us are very familiar with webinars, so just to make sure that you keep your microphones unmuted or muted during the presentations, and also the camera might be better to be turned off, just to make this webinar function fluently. So all those of you who are not very familiar what LCA4Regions project is about, so we will start with a brief video about the project, and then we will continue.
We are living beyond our means. We use 5 times more resources than the Earth can provide. Countries and regions are consuming very inefficiently. Most of the natural resources end up in waste, thus causing pollution problems. Regions play a major role in tackling this issue. We have growing independence and are responsible for policy decision-making. We are all facing similar challenges and look for solutions like sustainable agriculture, more efficient buildings, sustainable tourism. Let's see, what is your priority for sustainability?
Atsinaujinantys energijos ištekliai.
Puhdasta elinvoimaa.
Zeleno javno naročanje.
Racjonalnie gospodaruje zasobami.
Consapevolezza nel fare.
Resíduos e economia circular.
Eficiencia energética.
Nice! However, solving one issue at a time is not enough to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. Besides, there is always the risk of experiencing unwanted side effects. For example, biomass harvesting for bioenergy could have an impact on biodiversity and land quality. You are right. There is an alternative path, the life cycle approach. It is important to think about the world behind the products, programs, or services and understand the whole life cycle. Any action can have a secondary impact at a different stage in the process. Assessing what comes before and after each stage and taking into account the entire life cycle facilitates the implementation of more effective strategies. Life cycle approach integrates multiple sustainable goals and reduces the ecological footprints. Many life cycle methodologies are available and can help regions to take into account the life cycle thinking when developing their policy strategies. How to put that into practice? Let's start a new adventure. LCA4Regions. This Interreg Europe project aims to expand the use of life cycle methods to improve environment and resource efficiency. Transnational Learning Journeys will take the LCA4Regions partners to thematic workshops, site visits, and peer reviews where they will share regional experiences, challenges, opportunities, and exchange good practices with the support of local stakeholders and experts. The result will be a roadmap to help the 7 regions involved embrace life cycle thinking in their policies. Following this, 7 action plans, carefully implemented and monitored, will guarantee concrete improvements at regional level. Let's join forces to spread life cycle thinking for a greener future. Remember, think life chain. Think end of life. Think secondary impacts. Think multiple sustainable development goals. And you? Are you a policymaker, an LCA expert, a private company, or just interested in improving resource efficiency policies? You can play a role in this journey. Join us now.
So this was a presentation, a product of our project, and I think it quite nicely described what this project is all about. Now, in addition to the program that you've seen before for today, I'm glad to say that we will have a short description about the LCA concept by Fritz Balkau after a while, within the minutes, and then we will describe shortly about the Satakunta overview and policy context for today, and then we are proud to have presentations by a representative of Finnish Parliament, Eeva Kalli, and she will give a slight an overview of what she thinks about the LCA and the sustainability issues. And then we have two nice presentations of LCA, use of LCA in the management of waste and the bioeconomy, structuring the bioeconomy environment by Alberto Bezama and Eeva Muñoz. So these are the topics for today. Sorry, I just yes, just a minute. I was just a second. Screen two. Is this? Can you? Oh, I was describing the project. No. No. Just a second. Oh. Okay. So yeah, I was describing today's program. Sorry for this technical problem. Yes. So LCA concept is you will hear briefly what is this all about, the basics of LCA methodology, and really, so we will try to finish today at 11:30, and this is the program for today. So briefly about the project. So it has been running already 1 year, and the background for the regions for the project was that why to focus on LCA, that the experience was that the LCA assessment, life cycle assessments and management has been widely used, but it's been mainly used on a private sector. And the problem with the use of LCA or all the regions do possess several kinds of policies to support environment and political decision making, but there is some isolation of policies and that some decisions may not support the holistic progress of environmental thinking and this type of thing. So there is some spillovers on effects. So within this project, so we try to use these LC methods and a holistic approach in public policies, especially, and thus expand the circle of users. So, and as a consequence, so that finally the idea is to use natural resources more efficiently and more the sustainability issues to be taken care of. This is the background, and the project has 9 partners all over Europe. We don't now go into details, but it's a nice coverage of the different kinds of regions in Europe. So as you heard from the video, so there is a goal to prepare action plans each region, and we will follow the implementation of these action plans in practice for the 4th year, and it's been running now for 1 year, and in basic in the normal context we will visit the partner regions and practically see the progress done in each regions, and we are learning from the experiences from different regions and practically visiting those, and now due to consequences of the pandemic region, so we are now having the webinar allowing also very many people as we see today, so to take part in these learning journeys. The key actors in the project are the stakeholders, which many of you are also acting as a stakeholder in the region, and their contribution is crucial to make this project successful. So stakeholders take part in the regional analysis in each regions and good practices identifications, which we will talk about especially tomorrow. And we arrange regional workshops to discuss the regional problematics and the utilization potential of LCAs, and really the sharing of this information is done by interregional learning, and they take part also the action plan design and other ways of to act as an experts in the project. So now it's Fritz, if you are there on the line, so so please you may continue now telling us about the LCA methodology and basic principles. So Fritz, yes. Now we can't hear. Just to Could you unmute your microphone? Yes.
Yes, is that better? Can you hear?
Good.
Good. Thank you, Pekka, for that introduction. And I particularly enjoyed the video, I have to say, which summarizes nearly all of the key points that are behind the project. So first of all, good morning to everyone. It's nice to meet again. It's also nice to welcome those who are new to the project or who are just joining for one session. Clearly, as we saw, the project is moving ahead, but it's also clear that not everyone is an LCA expert. So we have to make it understandable to all of us so that we can explain it in turn to other stakeholders in our circle. So the purpose of this current presentation is to simplify the LCA story, but to keep it a little bit technical and to show what's behind it. It's a very short presentation, I have to say. Also, there's a longer presentation available for those who want to go more deeply into it and who in turn want to use it in their stakeholder groups. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen now. Just a moment. Just a moment. Where are we? Here we have it. Can you see my screen?
No, no.
Not yet, not yet. Just a moment. What's happening? Just a moment. You are screen sharing, it tells me. New share. Just a minute. How about that? Can you see the screen? How much?
Yes, Fritz, thank you.
Okay.
And can you please go to the presentation mode?
That's what I'm doing. Just a moment. Here we are.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to explain very quickly, I only have a few moments, life cycle methodologies for regions, but in particular, LCA methodologies as it refers to good practice policy. Most of you have put in good practice policies, that we've looked at them, we're sharing them in this TLJ3, but I want to explain a little bit the life cycle methodologies behind it. This is something that explains very well an everyday example of the contradiction in our lifestyle, but also the significance of thinking life cycle. We have a clean car, we don't see the impact that's happening somewhere else. This is the story, unfortunately, of many good practices, many good ideas. We're not very well aware of the secondary effects. So why do we want to think life cycle at all? That last slide certainly gives a visual presentation of it, but let's quickly look at life cycle methodologies avoid impacts rather than remediating them. It reduces the burden shifting problem, which we just saw, a dirty power station providing clean electricity. It achieves greater system efficiency. We'll explain that in a little while. Looks at upstream and downstream issues, addresses the time shift problem. So many times we push a problem into the future, and takes into account intergenerational responsibilities. So many of the problems we are creating now have to be solved by the next generation. So this is why we need to think life cycle to try to avoid some of these impacts. And what about regions? Why are life cycles relevant to regions? Well, here are some of the regional life cycles that we can think about. We have waste life cycles, we have resource development life cycles, we have building life cycles, we have food and materials life cycles, water footprints. We have the carbon footprint. These are all reasons why at the regional level we need to think a little bit more life cycle. The life cycles are already there. We're not putting something new in place. The life cycles are already there. The challenge now is to manage these regional life cycles more efficiently. A couple of quick concepts that we need to keep in the back of our minds. One of them is that the life chains, we would talk about life chain rather than a life cycle. The life chains have multiple inputs and outputs, and it's often these inputs and these outputs that have the real environmental impacts that we are concerned about. And here are some of the environmental impacts that we are concerned about on a daily basis in all regions. And there are quite a few of these. One of the reasons for using a life cycle approach is it's a systematic approach to incorporating all of these impacts into our thinking and into our actions. So how does life cycle methodology actually work? Well, life cycle assessment has been standardized by the International Standardization Organization under the 14,000 series. This is the general flowchart. We don't need to understand the details of this now, just to know that life cycle assessment is a standardized procedure that is available for everyone to use. A key aspect of life cycle assessment and life cycle thinking is to define the boundaries of our thinking. The narrower our thinking, the easier it is to make some decisions. If we broaden our boundaries, it becomes more complicated, but also the results are better. So we need to find a balance for the system boundaries that we look at. We'll see that in some of the good practices that we will examine shortly. The other thing that is key at the core of life cycle assessment is to look at what are called indicators or outputs, midpoint versus endpoint. We can see that the midpoint indicators are many of the impacts that we showed in a previous slide. The endpoint areas are human health, natural environment. It's a better environment, better health, better personal existence. Now, when I said we need to take an approach to scoping our exercise, one of the things that you will notice here in these midpoints, that it's not so common to take biodiversity into account, for example, and yet for many regions, it's a very important issue. So the choice of midpoint indicators and the areas of protection is very important in life cycle assessment. Let's have a quick look at some areas where life cycle assessment and related methodologies are actually applied on a day-to-day basis now. This is one that will appeal to Southern European countries, olive oil, the heart of many regional economies. This is an LCA of a product, olive oil. The olive oil is important for regional development. So understanding the LCA of olive oil, the inputs, the outputs is an important part also of regional development. This TLJ is about waste and materials. Let's have a quick look at LCA, comparative LCA. We compare 3 different waste management options. This example is from a region in southern region in Chile. It's looking at 3 alternatives for municipal waste management in order to be able to choose the best option. So unfortunately, you have to do the LCA 3 times. However, the results allow us a better choice. So something that's coming on stream very quickly now, social LCA. It's not only the impact on the physical environment, LCA can also contribute to the social environment. Social performance, here on the right, we can see the parameters of social performance. On the left, we see recycling life chain. How does the recycling life chain perform on a number of social criteria? LCA can tell us. While we're talking about waste, we need to know the volumes involved. Materials flow analysis, MFA, here can tell us, according to the different colors, where waste starts and where it goes. And an important one also that needs to be used a little more, what we call life cycle costing, to not only look at the impacts, but the costs along the life chain and the life cycle. Traditionally, when we buy something, and this is particularly true of regions and municipalities, they only look at the initial purchase price. So if we buy a printer, we buy the cheapest printer. If we take internal life cycle costs into account, we need to incorporate also the cost of providing the ink cartridges and the maintenance of it. Internal life cycle. Full life cycle costing looks at external public costs also, and we can see here the externalities. So full life cycle costing takes all three items into account for better decision making. Well, these few examples and a number of others can be packaged into what we call a life cycle toolbox. Here's one vision of the life cycle toolbox, which includes life cycle assessment tools, action tools, life cycle management tools. These toolboxes are relevant to many, many things that regions do. Sustainable products, industry, infrastructure, resource management, water resources. Recall the life cycles that I showed earlier. Well, the life cycle toolbox can help us look into the impacts, life cycle impacts in all of these areas that the regions are undertaking. Let's quickly look at some examples of existing partner use. In the LCA4Regions project, partners are already using LCA for a number of things. Building insulation in Poland can be required by regulation. Municipal waste strategies in Lithuania. There's a number of particular special life cycle methods that have already been used by some of the regions that are partnering the project. But in particular, we want to go into taking action. It's all very well to have the data that tells us what's going on. We need to pass this into action. This comes into play, life cycle management. These are a number of action areas, integrated waste management, require information, extended producer responsibility, and so forth. There's a variety of action items there that we can call life cycle management that involve all the stakeholders. Here's an example that those of us who are partners in the project already seen. The region of Navarra, through its use of life cycle assessment tools, is taking action on a number of areas here. These are some of the actions it's taking: EPDs, eco-labels, eco-design, footprint reductions, and so forth. So passing from assessment to management is the way we need to go. So let's summarize. Life cycle thinking improves sustainability of regions. The sustainability agenda is broad, but we have a life cycle toolbox from which we can choose the most appropriate approaches, assessment tools, and the life cycle management framework. So it's a very systematic approach, but it's very realistic and not so complicated to apply as we think. Later on in this TLJ, we will be looking at some of the good practices that the various partners have put together with the help of their stakeholders. Here are 10 life cycle filter steps that you can apply to your good practice. I can show these again when the time comes, when we're looking at good practices, but here's how you can filter your good practice through the filter of the life cycle management toolbox. Thank you very much. And I want to say that this presentation is very brief. If you or your stakeholders are interested in a more comprehensive orientation workshop at a future time, please let Sandra know and we will see what we can put together. So thank you very much, and we can have time for discussion at a later stage. I think Pekka wants to move on. Thanks, Pekka. I need to stop sharing my screen. Back to you, Pekka.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Fritz. Excellent here. I think this is very important to remind everyone about the LCA methodology, and we will come back to these issues later in this webinar. So it's time for me to I can describe briefly about Satakunta policy context. And we will analyze later on Thursday a little bit deeper about the situation. Now, I want to, yeah, I will start by saying that okay, we are facing a set of sustainability crisis globally and in Finland too, and just wanted to put this table of sustainable development goals here, also shown by Fritz here, so that we need to consider to work on all these goals. Satakunta regions, we are a partner in the project, but in many respects, our region policies are based on the national legislation of Finland, and Finland is committed to implement the whole 2030 agenda for SDGs, and it's done by many integrated policy actions. And I will here briefly describe about. There are three the main topics here: the climate change, loss of biodiversity, and overconsumption, which particularly are of concern in Finland's policy actions. They are dealing with the same topic, the sustainability crisis, from a little bit different perspectives. And first about the carbon, there's a project, the Carbon Neutral Finland by 2035, which are the goals of Finnish current the government agenda. So there is this emissions-free electricity and heat productions by the end of 2030s. All kinds of actions or policies are targeting into this particular issue, and also emphasize is the reduction of the carbon footprint of buildings, an important issue, as well as the promotion of circular economy. And at the moment, this type of now roadmap has been done by Sitra in Finland some few years ago, and now the second package is now under preparation for circular economy. And of course, circular economy as a team is contributing very much on the carbon neutrality. And there's lots of different kinds of actions within it. And also of importance is the promotion of the climate-friendly food policy, and particular target in this government agenda. One way to, there's different approaches how to promote these things, and we in Finland are particularly now considering and working on the tax policies, and that so that the taxes on environmentally harmful activities and is one option, and the reform of energy taxation. Finland uses forests a lot for producing energy, and now as a kind of a renewable energy source, but now it is of course forest industries are especially important in Finland, Finland's economy, and we do have lots of forest here. Now we need to understand carefully the importance of forests also for environment, and of course they function as carbon sinks. So and affect for instance biodiversity issue, how to handle our forest resources. We do have put a lot of efforts to save energy in different industrial sectors, as well as especially the building sectors, and it's important for us, and we can do a lot of in this area. Finland's climate policy plans are done, and they must be prepared in an open process, including citizen and stakeholder consultations. And I think that our central government is doing quite nice work on this, and there are citizen panels involved to get better insight, not just experts and researchers and administration people, but a regular citizen participation in the evaluations of actions and required action preparations. It's important. Some examples what is occurring here in Finland. We have several platforms that are based on analysis of carbon actions and carbon neutrality, targeting to carbon neutrality things. And one of the interesting points is this web page, which is provided by Finnish Environmental Institute, that has collected data from different sources and especially municipalities, and with the idea that we can all the time, everybody can analyze and see where the emissions, for instance, emissions come from, and this is a recent approach, and as a background, for many years we've been working on this carbon issue with municipalities. There's our Hinku system, for instance, that is a kind of commitment of municipalities to reduce carbon emissions. And now we don't have time to go in details here, but this is one of the issues. There's also government resolution more from less wisely. It's a resource efficiency, and this is a lot of targeting the fact that we consume a lot of materials. The consumption is a big issue, overconsumption. And some years ago, we can present an EnviMat tool. It's a tool that is able to has been used to analyze the carbon emissions from the Finnish consumption and Finnish economy perspective. So it's a tool that analyzes the environmental impacts of material flows, and as one of the goals, one of the results was that there's lots of impact about of course, the export of consumed goods. Almost half. Finnish economy uses imported material resources as much as domestic resources, and this kind of a model is good to understand and give some more strength on political decisions than in Finnish, putting Finnish economy further. Well, as an example, we can analyze the carbon emissions from or greenhouse gas emissions from different sectors. Here is an example of food production sector, and we can quickly see that the primary production is an important contributor in these emissions. And this as one example. Now turning to waste management, here in the graphs, the green line shows the actual development of rate of municipal waste circulation in Finland, and the blue lines describe the target where Finland has been has set a goal, and it's easy to see that we are behind the target, and there is challenges to reach those targets in the near future. How to do that? We understand that there are certain facts like bio-waste, how to avoid bio-waste turning into the municipal waste, so that it should be separately collected much more efficiently. We are in a good way to collect plastics also, take it away from the municipal waste, which normally ends up in the incinerators. So, but these issues we are tackling later in this webinar. For this, Finland has launched a plastics roadmap, and obviously tomorrow we will hear a little bit more on the plastics. How plastics are treated in Finland. There is this reform of current Waste Act, and unfortunately Finland is behind most of the other parts of Europe, so that and we are working on this reform still during next year. I think we can finalize that. But there are targets that will focus on smoothing the criteria of end of waste, about the bio-waste follow-up, and producer responsibility systems update. And this is quite important issue, so that the producer who produces a product is also responsible to manage tackling the waste, what the product produce is maybe forming at the end of life. So we are working on eco-design, for instance. Bioeconomy strategy has several strategic goals, not going into details, but there is this fourth goal, accessibility and sustainability of biomasses, which during this webinar series we are looking a little bit more closely on Thursday. Waste management service in Finland is nowadays functioning through this materialitory material market, so to say, and also one example of the government of different biomasses is about biomass atlas that is operating. That helps to understand where the biomasses are and how they are managed, and how they should be managed And we will hear examples also on Thursday. Lastly, I will here say about the carbon issue, the bioeconomy. The strategy in Finland. So there is not very much in this bioeconomy strategy, not so much views about how to reduce what is the role of consumption and material growth. So something that we should in Finland work more, and it should be understood quite clearly that not all currently used fossil and other non-renewable resources cannot be replaced with biomass. We need to understand that and understand the balance, how to retain, for instance, biodiversity, which is crucial for our ecosystem. And lastly, the circularity, waste prevention and energy efficiency are such things that should be emphasized, and also we should have lots of discussion on sustainable lifestyles that which are crucial to make our global environment really sustainable. So with this notes, I will leave the stage now for the next presentation. I will stop this sharing. Okay, and we will have a video now. We were asking the Parliament member Eeva Kalli to be here with us, but unfortunately today she has to be in the Parliament working, but she has prepared a video presentations for us, and she wanted to say that she's very willing to answer if you have questions concerning any issue, so that he's very willing to participate then in the later and answering questions. So after the presentations, if you have, make notes and we can arrange those questions to her later, in the later phase. Yeah. So, but yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants around Europe, let me first thank you for this opportunity to take part in this fascinating and topical webinar concerning sustainable development and life cycle approach. We all know that we only have one planet Earth. Our planet is unique with all its versatile nature. We also know that we are currently overusing the precious natural resources it provides us. Global challenges like climate change and the loss of biodiversity put even more pressure on our planet's ecosystems. Living life is in decline. Fortunately, all kinds of challenges can be tackled and solved by working together with determination. That is how I think and strongly believe in. However, in order to turn to a more sustainable path, we must reform our economies and our entire thinking of consumption and production patterns. We need to move from a linear make, use, dispose economy to a resource-efficient circular economy. The circular economy may be a new word, but its principles are familiar from earlier days, already from my parents' childhood. Basically, it is about thinking carefully what we really need, maximizing the life cycle of products, and in the end, reusing or recycling them as efficiently as possible. In a circular economy, we first of all consume only what we really need. We may reuse more, reduce our consumption, and also refuse some things. We should also think whether we need a product or rather a service. Must we really own everything, or can we share some things? It used to be quite common to borrow tools from a neighbor or co-own equipment that is needed only a few times a year. These days, city bikes or shared wardrobes represent a few examples of the sharing economy. Smart and easy, whether evaluated from the economic or ecological perspective. Dear friends, another key element is product design. All products should be designed to be long-lasting, repairable, reusable, and recyclable. This will help us reduce the consumption of virgin raw materials and thereby address the big environmental problems we are facing. A good product is not thrown away the next day. Considering the development during past few decades and years, I actually do think that we have managed to take big steps, or in certain cases, even huge leaps in promoting more sustainable ways of producing, consuming, and recycling products and materials. However, in terms of life cycle approach, we are not yet there. To be honest, we are still prone to regulate and assess the impacts of products and services by concentrating rather on certain individual phases of life cycles than the life cycle as a whole, thus closing the circle. Therefore, we need to adopt more coordinated and integrated methods and means to assess the impacts in order to achieve even more sustainable ways of living. There is no doubt this is needed in politics, in administration, in business, and in our daily life. And dear friends, this is exactly what you are aiming at. And I therefore very much encourage you to focus on these extremely important questions we desire to have answers. What can be done to increase the overall sustainability in different areas of living? And how to measure the sustainability of the whole life circle of products and services? We need to get out of the silos and adopt a more comprehensive approach. Dear friends, in Finland, we want to be forerunners. Our current government program sees the circular economy as a new basis for our economy. We have a strong basis to build on. In 2016, we launched our first circular economy roadmap with the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra. Currently, we are developing a new strategic circular economy program to take us to the next level. The program's aim is to transform our economy into one that is based on the principles of circular economy by 2035. This is also an important step towards achieving our government's target of climate neutrality by 2035. The vision we have set ourselves in the program is that by 2035, firstly, sustainable products and services are mainstream and the sharing economy is commonplace. Secondly, our choices are future-proof and they strengthen our fair and just welfare society. Thirdly, the use of natural resources is sustainable and materials remain in circulation longer and more safely. Fourthly, the breakthrough of the circular economy has been achieved through innovations, digital solutions, smart regulation, and responsible investors, businesses, and consumers. And last but not least, Finland is a strong player in the global arena and a credible provider of sustainable solutions on the international market. This vision, I admit, is ambitious, and we can only get there if we have all actors on board making the change. We need the inputs of municipalities, cities, regions, business life, and research institutions. Municipalities and regions is actually one of the thematic groups that is involved in preparing the new circular economy program in Finland. We, as politicians, must create enabling legal frameworks and incentives for developing circular economy solutions and business models. Municipalities and regions are powerful agents of change, also in developing the circular economy. At the moment, we actually see networks of cities and regions emerging around the world. Some of the networks have set themselves very ambitious climate targets and also aim to become zero waste and consume less. The cities and regions do not just set targets, but they also involve all key players from businesses to citizens to the work. The frontrunners create roadmaps and launch concrete demonstrations, experiments, and pilots. They aim also to strengthen the regional economy, to create growth and jobs, and to promote sustainable well-being. Public procurement is one tool that local actors can use to promote circular economy and other sustainability targets. The value of the Finnish public sector's procurements is approximately 35 billion euros annually, or on average 16% of the country's GDP. That is a huge amount of money. It is obvious that public procurements play a remarkable role in promoting sustainable development. And in this sense, in 2018, we established a network-based competence center for sustainable and innovative public procurement in Finland called Keino, as part of our previous government's actions to promote the circular economy and climate action. Keino supports and helps Finnish public contracting authorities with the development of sustainable and innovative procurement. It aims to raise awareness about the potential of public procurement in promoting sustainability targets and to increase the number of innovative and sustainable procurements in Finland. It is also a platform for contracting entities to openly disseminate information on their own experiences and also learn from one another. Dear friends, particularly now that we are struggling with the COVID-19 crisis, we must make sure that also our economic recovery measures support sustainable development at all levels. We can turn this into an opportunity to build climate neutral, resource efficient, and socially just circular economies. We have both European Union and national resources available for the work. Now our job is to use them wisely. We need to create a more sustainable lifestyle, but also it will require a change in perspective. In other words, we need to move on to a resource-efficient circular economy. And I believe we have every potential for doing this. With these words, I wish you all an inspiring webinar and stimulating discussions about this extremely important topic. And I am also looking forward to your final conclusions and concrete outcomes. So thank you and bon courage.
So thank you, Eeva, Kalli, of this nice presentations, and so really, if any comments or questions arose during her presentation, so don't hesitate to leave us to notes, and we can deliver then these all questions and commentary to her, and we can come back later then on those issues. So we have today still two presentations, and the first one is Alberto Bezama's presentation. Are you, Alberto, there? Yes, I think you are online. Very well. Nice to hear you and see you.
Thank you, Pekka.
So Alberto is an expert on LCA, and his topic is key sustainability issues for implementing bioeconomy regions, analyzing industrial integrations through life cycle based tools. So, and yeah, the floor is yours. You may also present yourself and if you want, and tell us more about. Please.
Thank you, Pekka. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. That is it. So let me.
If you have a presentation, so please share the screen.
You should see it right now.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So let me put it in presentation mode, and then I am all set. So thank you, Pekka, for this nice invitation. I wanted to give a first talk about the key sustainability issues for implementing bioeconomy regions, giving an example of what has been our experience here in central Germany, in the regions that are composed by Saxony, Saxony-Anhalt, and Thuringia. My name is Alberto Bezama, and I am a chemical engineer by professional deformation, but I have been working for almost 15 years in sustainability issues. I started with the waste management sector, in the cleaner production sector, and then now I have been working for over the last 8 years in assessing sustainability in what has become one of the key transitional processes here in Germany, which is the bioeconomy. And since 5 years, I am leading one working group here at the Helmholtz Centre for Environmental Research in Leipzig that deals with the development and application of life cycle-based tools in order to assess, in particular, the regionalized or the regional aspects or impacts of implementing bio-based technologies in the local infrastructures. So as I said, I wanted to bring you this presentation today. In this sense, I wanted to have 4 points. One is to discuss about bioeconomy and regional challenges, and I am very happy of hearing what Ms. Kalli was discussing before. She gave a floor to many of my points today, so I'm happy for that. Afterwards, a little bit of life cycle thinking and life cycle management. Why are we using this in order to address the challenges in the bioeconomy field? and afterwards I wanted to give you a case study of a regional bioeconomy, what we have been working on for over the last 7 years, and afterwards some lessons learned that can be afterwards also replied in other sectors, such as sectors and regions, such as for example in Finland, and also in subjects that are related to the bioeconomy but not the bioeconomy itself, for example when thinking about circular economy projects or programs. Without further ado, I wanted to then start with the bioeconomy and regional challenges. When we started some years ago in the bioeconomy field, the focus was set on technological development. The idea was how to implement the technologies that are now being developed into the local infrastructures. What we could see is that technological development and the markets are one part of the issue. There's a huge other set of further issues that are going not only in the technical and economic aspects, but touch also some very interesting and important issues such as environmental issues and social and economic issues. And here we are talking about biodiversity. We are talking about new business models and new ways of industrial symbiosis in order to produce further products using the same or using the local resources in the best appropriate way. Of course, the security of supply for the society is a major component, and the global responsibility are issues that now, especially now that after 2017 with the new Sustainable Development Goals, has been really determined that how deep these type of components are important for the bioeconomy. So there's much more to bioeconomy, and also certainly for the circular economy, than it is only the technological development and new products. And we have to keep this into consideration if we really want to achieve an efficient use of the available resources, whilst at the same time achieving the highest revenues for the products that we can get out of them, and at the same time fulfilling the societal needs. This is not easy to grasp at once, but once you start discussing all the issues that you have, especially at a regional level, you start realizing that there's much more to it. We did have one summary of our experiences in this regard, and we summarized them in a paper that was published at the end of last year. And here, what we wanted to say is that in order to push the bioeconomy forward on a regional level, we have to not only think about technological alternatives, but we have to also define a sustainable feedstock basis. And for that, one important issue is to define the regional and national feedstock strategies, that they are aligned, not only on a top-down approach, but also considering the local resources and local infrastructures that are present in the different regions, and that we get data, because we need a monitoring system. We need monitoring systems to define how far are we from the different goals at the different levels, at local, regional, and national levels. For that, we need data sets for biomass, and for regional limitations, and also for assessing the goals that we are defining. And for that, we need a systems approach for assessing the regional landscapes, and also, of course, for the national landscape in the bioeconomy field. We need regional critical mass. Miss Kalli was saying we need interaction among stakeholders. Yes, we do. We need clusters and networks as active platforms for discussion. because we need these interactions within the regions in order to assess what are our goals and what are our immediate actions to take. For that, we need also adequate governance structures, and we need the tools to monitor and also to manage the different approaches that are being implemented in the region. And last but definitely not least is the public and social acceptance, and we need the involvement of the regional stakeholders, and also we need to expand our systems analysis. It's not only needed the classical, technical, economical evaluation, but also to include social sciences into the analysis that we need for this case. So these are the first aspects, and what do we have here? We have in order to address and tackle these challenges, we need a systematic approach, and that can be brought by the life cycle thinking and also with the life cycle management. I came with some people were asking me what is life cycle management, what is systems analysis, and why do you need them? What do you need them for? And some time ago I was saying, well, it's kind of the situation of Julius Caesar when he conquered in one of his major battles, and he said, "Beni, vidi, vici." What does it mean? I came, I saw, and then I conquered. And this is the same thing what happens in the life cycle management, in the systems approach. You have to come, you have to understand. You have to understand what are your resources and infrastructures, your market conditions, the social aspects of the region, in order to generate a capital of knowledge, your know-how basis that can allow you to manage. But this is the first step. The second step is to see, to analyze, to model, to define scenarios that allow you to know the what-if situations, and that can allow you to assess potential impacts along the line. You need to analyze your political framework, because only that you can generate a way or a framework in which the different stakeholders can move and can provide their own services into the account. And we need to understand behaviors. It's not only acceptance, it's also about behaviors. What are the drivers for society? Why are we behaving in one way under these conditions and the other way under these other conditions? Nowadays we are facing COVID-19, and we have realized how important it is to understand why are we behaving, and in some countries we are not behaving good in one respect. In some other countries, the rules are being better recognized and better followed. But it's all about how the society is taking these issues into their own, and they comply with them. So we need, only with this, we need to generate knowledge, and we need to learn. Only at this point we can actually implement, we can conquer, we can provide recommendations to optimize the framework conditions of the bioeconomy. Ms. Kalli was saying that we need to get out of the traditional way of testing and seeing how it works. We have to do this, and we have to shorten up the time spaces for this optimization by making this systematic approach. I think I'm a true believer that we can reach better achievements through this systematic assessment. So with that being said, I wanted to bring you a case study of a regional bioeconomy. And in this case, I wanted to show you the region in which we have been working for some years. And as I mentioned before, this region is comprised by the federal states of Saxony-Anhalt, Saxony, and here Thuringia. And this region was in the former GDR. What you can see here is that in this wood cluster in Rotterdam, you can find 40% of the beech wood resources in Germany, and that connected to the fact that very close by you have the petrochemical industrial conglomerate with sites in Leuna, Bitterfeld, Schkopau, and Berlin. Then it was decided to see how we can mobilize these resources and to feed this petrochemical conglomerate in order to see if we can achieve a bioeconomy, biorefinery concept in this region. And in our particular point of view, we were asking ourselves, because we were accompanying this research, and we were asked how sustainable are the products of the bioeconomy regions and what are the advantages of these bioeconomy regions. We did have a series of further questions, because at this point we needed to really come through with new methodologies that were not defined yet, and that could help us to say how to measure and monitor sustainability of value chains in a bioeconomy region. Important here is that we therefore defined our goals, and our major goal was to establish a monitoring tool for systematic analysis of the regional bioeconomy sustainability. And in order to achieve that goal, we needed to define two major points, and one was the sustainability index for value chains in a bioeconomy region, and also we needed to establish a new regionally differentiated social life cycle method for assessing the socioeconomic impact of the bioeconomy in our region. This was a work that took place during 5 years, and I wanted to come with this part of the assessment, what was our work in the life cycle assessment, and then how we took this work in the LCA field in order to use it as a basis for recommendations for our work. I have to say at this point that it took us more than 2 years to define what were the different stakeholders, their visions, their needs, their ambitions, and also to define what could be some alternatives for our work in the region. So this work takes time. It's not something that is done overnight. This is more or less what we had to assess. We came this was a project that took 5 years, and that in these 5 years we assessed, and there were more than 145 projects that were dealing with logistics and forest applications, also the production of new construction materials out of wood, what were called the new construction materials, a biorefinery unit that allowed to define different platforms and chemical platforms for the utilization of the different parts of the wood. It's not only the primary wood logs, and also advanced materials section that went into composites, and of course closing this utilization was the energetic utilization of all the residues that were defined and generated in these other 3 first steps. As I said, this was our landscape, technological landscape, but we needed to come up with an overview of how to define or how to assess these individual technological developments, and in order to to define if this if their implementation was bringing or not advantages at the regional level. So we came up with an idea that if we want to assess a region, we need to define the characteristics of the region, and this was what we did here. We defined a product basket that that could characterize the different products that could be produced within the region. And you can see here that our bioeconomy region product basket is composed by energy carriers, by product composites,
here next to it is the reference product basket, and this reference product basket is actually defined by the products that are going to be substituted by our regional bioeconomy products. So you can see that biomethane is going to replace methane, and the PLA is going to replace expanded polystyrene, and the reinforced composites are going to replace polyurethane, and so on. So we can actually define what are our products, our reference products, and then afterwards we can compare them through their reference values, or better said, through their capacities, and compare them, our products, with their references. We did have a series of, this was not only done by us, this was done in cooperation with a series of colleagues. All the colleagues which were involved in the technological development, but also different databases and different organizations that helped us to provide not only the technical data but also the economic benchmarks in order to assess the products. I wanted to show you some examples, and like Ms. Kalli said, we had to go from product design until the management of the whole region. And in this case, what we did was to start first with the product design, and we assessed the individual value chains, like the one that we have here, the production of boards. And these boards were actually produced with different, what we tested, or what the colleagues were testing, is how can we introduce better possibilities for substituting substituting fossil-based resins or fossil-based additives into the production of these boards. And as you can see here, this was made. This is one line that connects the different both the material stream, the construction materials, the biorefinery, and the different adhesives that were produced within the region. So this was a more traditional, let's say, way of optimizing the product, considering the whole life cycle. We did this with all the different value chains, as I was mentioning before, and we could put them all in one model that would allow us then to define the overall effects of the product baskets under different conditions and under different levels of integration. And we compare them against the what was called the reference product basket. So this was done, and we also published it, and we could reveal what are the environmental advantages of this industrial symbiosis in the region. And this is the product basket that I was mentioning before. And what we did was to define different scenarios. And these scenarios allowed us to identify what are the possible ways of integrating the region now that we are implementing these bio-based value chains. In a first scenario, we defined, okay, what if the companies are working individually and independent one of each other? In the second scenario, we defined what if they actually start to merge and to cooperate through thermal cascades. And finally, what if we actually define what our key technologies that allow not only a material but also an energetic symbiosis within the region. The results are very interesting, and you can see that this is a comparative analysis. That means the red color means that we are worse than our reference basket when we compare our regional bioproducts basket. And we can see that we are not doing very good when against at least these environmental indicators when we don't integrate. We start getting much better when we integrate and when we have a full bio-based or a full biorefinery concept, we have a much better advantages. Now you see also that there are further and greater red bars here, but this is we already identified this the issues that were mainly due to the refrigeration aspects or the refrigeration setup that we had in some of the technologies. But this is something that you can tackle, and then the results would be much better. I said that we wanted to, or we did involve stakeholders in the management goals, and we actually had several workshops, and we contacted more than 60 regional and national stakeholders within these years, and we did this in order to assess what were their ambitions, their goals, but also to make a sort of a decision support system that could allow us not only to give a number, but also to provide what does this number mean. And this was the major issue here for this work. We also just provided one paper in this regard. This decision support system was called Suministro, and this allowed us to define what are the conditions within our region. And you can see here pretty much the same product basket and the same scenarios. But what is important here is that when we discuss not only about environmental indicators, but also concepts of sufficiency within the region, or social aspects, for example, considering the stakeholder workers in the different organizations within the regions, then you can see with a major or with a better understanding what does this integration mean in terms of achieving your goals, your regional goals. And you can see here in green color, hopefully you see at your monitor, you can see that the greater the integration done through a strategic process, then you can achieve better scores, and then that means that you are achieving better the goals of that you identified as the goals of your region. Well, this is a bit of commercial for our Suministro, but important here is to say that the Suministro tool is based on sustainability indicators. It's developed for a cluster region, but can be also implemented in other regions if we carry out like a calibration of the different goals. And the indicators important to cover the entire product life cycle and all the 3 dimensions of sustainability. And the idea that was the origin of this work was that we can use, not we, managers can use this tool and these results to set the cluster or the networks strategies for the long and mid-term. What have we learned? We have learned a lot of things. We started as a newborns, and now we are finding ourselves learning. We can take some key messages. Yes, bioeconomy or the circular economy is not per se sustainable. That's something that not many people want to hear, but it is a reality. It is about how are you understanding your own resources and your own regional characteristics. It is only then that you can really propose action lines that allow you to generate a sustainable bioeconomy. Also, we cannot regard bioeconomy or the circular economy as just a substitution, as I was saying before, as with a substitution approach, meaning that we develop technologies in order to substitute this and this technology. That's not the best approach. We need to understand it as an innovation approach where we get new opportunities for niche applications that are, at the end of the day, using the resources that we have in a better way. We have great chances for climate protection, but only if we regard the region as a complex system and where you make your strategy of implementing the new value chains, considering a coupling and cascade use or orientation. Only then you can not only define an industrial symbiosis, but this industrial symbiosis is aligned with the regional characteristics. So a better understanding of the bioeconomy system is therefore necessary to recognize the opportunities and risks within the region, and therefore to act accordingly in your action lines and the strategies. So this is what I brought today. I hope that I remained in time, and I am happy for your questions.
Thank you, Alberto. This was very nice view on the of this complex process of bioeconomy and how to really in a long term where you take the LCA as a very nice way to be integrated into the whole regional progress analysis and politics and important points. Thank you so much. That was very clear. Now I think we have a good time for discussion and what you have in mind after Alberto's and for yes. So I think we have some of the. So you may set your questions via our chat option and also raise hands if you want to we can discuss with now.
I see already, Pekka,
yes.
a question from Jolanta.
Yes.
And in the chat, thank you, Jolanta. Your question is, Suministro could be used only for bioeconomy? Suministro, the origin of Suministro was actually the bioeconomy region, but when you see the way we developed it, this is a decision support tool that can be used at different and in other examples. What we need to understand here that Suministro is a framework, and a framework that we developed that in order to catch in one decision support system all the different dimensions of sustainability aligned with the goals of the region. So the way of using Suministro for other applications outside of the bioeconomy would be to define the characteristics of that particular sector, and see if our proposed set of indicators are also aligned to the goals that are identified for those sectors, and to change them or adopt them accordingly if there are any differences. But I think I cannot think on one tool, regionalized tool, that can be transported one-to-one to another region, or from one sector to the other. There's always a need of adapting or changing or calibrating the different set of goals or the associated indicators. I hope this answers your questions, Yolanta. Okay, thank you.
So good. So please, now you have a chance to give your ideas on your own regional context. How do you see this approach? So I was happy to myself see you took these examples of this wood and forest industry sector as a good starting analysis point. And we in Satakunta regions we have now started to work on like there's a program ongoing where this wood residues they are really now at the policy level to try to tackle the issue of forest residues and wood residues, and how this side stream could be better utilized and in the region. So this part is at the moment now starting in our Satakunta region.
Oh, that is then you are at the start of a very challenging period.
Yes, and it's very nice. Good.
As I mentioned before, one part of the iceberg that you don't see when you see it floating to you, coming to you, when you start this sort of approaches that you're facing now, the social aspects. How to deal with the social aspects. It's not only about the installation of industrial facilities in one place or the other. It's also, Miss Kalli was saying before, how do we generate, or how can we help at generated markets for the different products, and that, for example, can be done by public procurement. This is a very important issue that we have discussed in some workshops before, but that needs to also make one further step, and that we have to consider that also, and as part of the social issues. It's not only the acceptance, but also when we consider it as an overall system, it's also what are the public sector, what is the role of the public sector to play here to open markets for the new products, and therefore to make a pulling effect to the bioeconomy or the circular economy in this regard.
Oh yeah, yes, very much so. Yes, yeah. We haven't talked so much yet in the project about public procurement, because that's a thematic pillar. It is coming later in the phase, but now we already actually need those good practices on this sector, and it's absolutely sure that can act as a very important part. Was there other questions on this? No? Okay, sorry. So I think that hopefully this has increased new ideas for everybody about this presentation. I think it's I assume that we as a partner regions here, so that we might be in a very different levels depending on the regions, but so maybe we can have some comments. How do you see in each regions? How do you see the present situation? If you will now open your hands. So there's Raul's question, Alberto. What about the policies? They are developing simultaneously to bioeconomy goals.
This is a very important question, Raul. Thank you. You can say the origin or the origin of our work was to help and support the region that was a cluster region. So we did have this analysis, and we incorporated this stakeholder analysis, but always with the goal of supporting an industrial cluster. So they are not the stakeholder group that can deal with the policy making issue. Nonetheless, what we did was to provide recommendations for setting the strategy, or to revise the strategy of the cluster. And this revision of the cluster strategy was done at the end of the cluster, the financing of our work. That was done, and this and here's the thing: in our region, the cluster is one important stakeholder in the bioeconomy field, and these experiences can be then translated, or not translated, communicated to the bodies that deal with the bioeconomy, regional bioeconomy strategies. And these, well, I mentioned before that we are embedded in a triangle of federal states, and in one particular state, actually these strategies and these experiences have been used, and they have used the cluster and its whole experience in order to support the development of the regional bioeconomy strategy. And so that it's an indirect step in this regard, Raul. We didn't provide the recommendations directly to the stakeholder, to the policymakers. We did make these recommendations, and we did provide with us information to our cluster, and through the cluster, these recommendations were given to the policy making bodies. And then in a regional case, in one of the regions, it has been resulted in the actually supporting the definition of new policy framework or a strategic line. You're welcome, Raul. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We have still some time if anyone wants to give any comments still, or continue this. And Alberto, if you are available, for instance, in later part of our webinar series?
I can stay for a while, and then afterwards, unfortunately, I have another
yes.
appointment, but I will stay for a while here.
Okay.
Okay.
So very nice. Thank you. So
Thank you
may.
For the invitation.
Yes, that was. So we'll come back to these issues later. Then, Alberto.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And Ivan, if you are somewhere close to online.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Oh,
okay,
good to hear you.
I'm just starting my camera.
Okay,
hello, everyone.
Thank you.
So shall I load my presentation?
So I think that yes, it's time for you now to continue. So please, please, Ivan.
Yeah, sure. Just a second. Good. Okay, you should be seeing it.
Yes.
Right now.
Good. Yes, we can see it.
If I can put it in presentation mode. That's it. Okay. So, well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this workshop. And I hope the presentation is interesting to all of you. So, this is life cycle assessment applied to refractory waste management in a steelworks. This presentation has this structure. So first I'm going to introduce life cycle assessment as such, because I was told that maybe not everyone in the audience is familiar with LCA. So I will very briefly introduce the tool. Then I will also introduce refractories and the 5 refract project where we have done this work, and then the case study as such. And then I was also asked to talk about the role of the regional authorities in this project. So I will conclude my presentation with that. Very briefly to start, just for you to know who we are. So my company is called 20 LCA Consultants, and we are a small consultancy company. We have headquarters in the University of Aalborg in Denmark, although myself, I'm based in Barcelona in Spain. And everything we do revolves around life cycle approaches, sustainability assessment with life cycle approaches. We are 10 people in Denmark, Spain, and the Netherlands. And we do LCA studies. We also develop LCA tools and methodology, as well as training. We work with private companies, but we also work with public authorities, and we very much participate in EU-funded projects, such as where currently we have 2 live projects, but also in Horizon 2020, for example. So LCA, well, here you have the definition of LCA according to the ISO standards. So it's what LCA is an evaluation of inputs and outputs associated to a product system through its life cycle. Now, here in this picture, you can see an example of a life cycle for a particular product. In this case, is a washing detergent. And you can see what the life cycle stages would be for this product. So first you have to produce some vegetable oils that will be used to produce surfactants, and then this will be taken to a factory where the detergent is produced, packaged, and sent to the supermarkets, and then the consumer uses the product, and we end up with some waste, some packaging waste, some wastewater from the washing machine. Now, what we try to do with LCA is to assess all of these activities that are necessary for the consumer to have the activity of clothes washing. And we quantify these activities in terms of the use of natural resources and pollution. So we have inputs of natural resources, outputs of pollution. Now this would be a cradle to grave, as we call it, LCA for the product. When we do waste, LCA of waste management, we focus on this activity here. Although what we do with waste also has effects on other parts of the life cycle. For example, if we recycle the materials and the waste, then this will have an effect on raw material supply for other, maybe not for the detergent supply chain, but for other industrial supply chains. And LCA is conducted according to four phases. First, you have to do what is called goal and scope definition, where you define what's your research question, what activities you need to assess, what data you will be needing, what environmental impact indicators you're interested in, and so on. So you're kind of setting the scene for the study. Then we have the inventory analysis, where essentially what you do is a mass and energy balance of the activities you're assessing. And the impact assessment, what it does is to aggregate the information from the inventory analysis into a set of indicators that are more easily interpreted. And this, for example, would include indicators such as the carbon footprint. And finally, we have interpretation, which, well, as its name suggests, is about understanding what the results tell you, what activities are more or less important in your life cycle, checking the robustness of your results, and of course, drawing some conclusions. Now, refractories. What are refractories? These are materials that can stand really high temperatures, and they are needed for many industrial sectors. Pretty much any industrial sector that needs to work at very high temperatures. And this includes, for example, production of metals, cement, glass, ceramics. So anytime you have a furnace, you need to line, to put a layer of refractories in order to protect the equipment. They can be preformed, such as in bricks. For example, in this picture, you see here a ladle, which is a big, like this huge cup where steel is melted, and you can see the hot burning layer inside the cup. This is a layer of refractory bricks. But they can also be they can also come in unformed shapes, so that they have the appearance of cement or concrete, if you want. They are produced with a wide variety of minerals, and some of them are quite economically important. For example, magnesite, which is magnesium carbonate, is considered as a critical raw material by the EU. And every year around 37 million tons are produced, and most of this is produced in China. Steel industry is the main user. You can see that about 3/4 of all refractories are used by steel manufacturers. And during their use, because they are subject to these really harsh conditions, around half of the material itself is kind of eroded or dissolved or consumed. And when the refractories need to be dismantled, around half of the mass has disappeared. And then so we end up with around 20 million tons of refractory waste every year that needs to be there. Well, needs to be managed, and at the moment still the majority of the waste is sent to landfills. So what is this project about? It's called Life 5 Refract. It's a project funded by the LIFE program, European Union, and its goal is to achieve a higher degree of valorization of refractory waste in the steel industry. So this particular goal is to achieve 80% of valorization of refractory waste generated in steel works. And the specific strategies to achieve this would be first to conduct a very detailed audit of refractory use, refractory waste generation in steelworks, to establish source separation procedures in steelworks so that this waste can be better sent for either reuse or recycling, and also developing products, refractory products that incorporate a certain content of recycled material coming from refractory waste. All the activities have been piloted in a real steel factory in the municipality of Basauri. This is in the north of Spain. This plant produces 800,000 tons of steel per year. Now, as part of the project, we have conducted an environmental impact assessment, an LCA, and this is what our role was in the project, to conduct this study. And the project is coordinated by the steel manufacturers in the north, and we have several partners from. We have industrial partners. We have the University of Malaga in Spain also, and ourselves. And as industrial partners, we have Magna, which is an industry specialized in magnesium-based refractories, and Refractories specialized in alumina-based refractories. Here I'm showing you some pictures which are actually, they are screenshots from several videos we have produced in the project. Here you see a ladle, a steel ladle, so this huge container where the steel is melted in the electric arc furnace. So this machine, this little bulldozer, is steering down the bricks. Here you see a front loader which is piling some refractory waste that will be sent to landfill. And here you can already start seeing some different activities related to reuse and recycling. So you see some operators that are dismantling by hand the bricks, and they are putting them in this violet skip container. So these bricks will later be reused in other applications in the steel plant. And this is what I show you in this next picture. You can see this is the electric arc furnace, and you can see there are two layers of bricks. The first one is reused bricks, so bricks that have already been used previously. And then in the background, you can see the layer of new bricks that are as a second layer. Here you can also see some monolithic refractory being sprayed. And here, this is a refractory that's produced with recycled content. So it contains magnesium oxide material that comes from refractory waste. And this is the same, but instead of magnesium oxide, this is a refractory concrete that's produced using recycled alumina and isostatics refractories. These are materials based on alumina, that's aluminium oxide. So the LCA had as goal the quantification of the potential environmental benefits associated to the strategies developed in the project in a particular steel works, which is the one used as pilot in the project. We have two scenarios that we are comparing. One that is called current and considers the situation of the steelworks at the start of the project in 2018. And then we have what we call 5 refract scenario, which reflects a hypothetical implementation of all the strategies developed in that same year. We are taking the same year so that the amount of waste is exactly the same in the two scenarios. The functional unit, which is what you take as the basis for the comparison, is the total volume of refractory waste produced in 2018. That would be 5,798 tons. And you see this waste in the table. You can see the different waste streams, their composition, and how much it's produced. So most of the waste is based on magnesium oxide, mainly bricks and monolithic refractories based on this compound, magnesium oxide or magnesium oxide with carbon. In the current scenario, about half, more or less, a bit more than half of the waste is already being sent either for recycling or reuse, because Sidenor has been working now for quite a few years in trying to improve refractory waste management. So it's not like they're starting from scratch. They are already recycling part of the waste. And then, but in the 5 refractory scenario, of course, we see the recycling and reuse levels increase, so that they are not sending anymore anything directly to landfill. Everything goes either to recycling or reuse. And this is a diagram that shows the activities we are assessing in the LCA. So you can see on the left side, we have the different waste streams. Each waste has a certain procedure for collection with trucks, with front loaders, etc. The waste is transported off-site, either to a recycling plant or to a landfill. The recycling process, you can see it's not perfect. It also has some discards that needs to be sent to the landfill. And then, because of the recycling and reuse activities, we produce secondary materials that are substituting primary materials. So, for example, if we reuse bricks, that means we can substitute new bricks. And so we are avoiding the production, the extraction of magnesite, the production of the bricks, the transport of the bricks to the factory, to the steelworks, etc. All these avoided activities is what we have in these gray boxes here. So in the end, the life cycle assessment is we approach it as a kind of cost and benefit analysis. It's just that we are not assessing these costs in monetary units, but in physical units in terms of CO2 emissions, for example. We have activities such as collection, transport, and treatment that induce environmental impacts because we use energy to collect, to treat the waste. But at the same time, because we achieve recycling and reuse of these materials, we are also having some environmental savings due to all these activities with the gray background. Okay, so this would be the current scenario. And when we shift to the 5 refractory scenario, well, the picture, this diagram is a bit more complex than the previous one because we have more valorization routes. You can see that nothing is directly sent to the landfill, but still the recycling plant needs to landfill some materials. Well, I don't have the time to go into details about this diagram, but essentially you can see that it's the same approach. We have waste that goes to different treatments, and thanks to this, we get secondary materials that are replacing primary materials. Then one of the main challenges when conducting the LCA, and this goes for any LCA, and any LCA practitioner will tell you this, the main challenge is collecting the necessary data. We need a lot of data, and what we usually do is to refer to data as in 2 levels, if you want. We need foreground data and we need background data. By foreground data, we refer to data for those activities that you could say you could get primary data or first-hand data yourself. In this project, for example, we can mention that waste generation, composition, data on collection and transport or treatment, these activities could be somehow characterized in terms of data thanks to the partners in the project, which have knowledge on this. Not so much, for example, on the production of refractories. So I mean, if you need data on refractories produced in China, we didn't have any links with Chinese producers, so we needed to rely on literature, technical reports, and so on. And then what we mean by background data is all those activities you cannot really study yourself or get data yourself. This, for example, could be what is the impact of producing electricity that your factories are using. For this kind of activities, you rely on commercial LCA databases. And in this case, we use the database EcoInvent, which is the most widely used, and we use the software SimaPro in which this database is implemented. We do all the calculations in this software SimaPro. Okay, and with this, I'm going to jump into the results, and I will discuss mainly greenhouse gas emissions. This was one of the indicators with of the most interest for the project. And what you see in this graph is the tons of CO2 equivalents per year associated to managing the waste according to the two scenarios. You can see into the two shades of green. You have the current scenario, 5-REFRACT scenario, and the labels correspond to different activities we are assessing. So, for example, the first three labels correspond to the activities related to managing the waste, that's collection, transport, the recovery of the materials and the landfilling of the discarded fractions. And then everything else, except the one at the end, that's the total. Everything else here refers to the avoided, in this case, CO2 emissions, related to the primary materials that we are avoiding. So, for example, this DBM is dirt-burn magnesia. That's magnesium oxide produced from magnesite in China. Because we are capable of recycling magnesium oxide from the bricks, etc., we are capable of substituting a huge amount of this material from China. So we have a substantial saving in CO2 emissions thanks to this. Now, if you see the last bar here is telling you that related to the current scenario, which was already saving around 3,000 tons of CO2 per year, the 5-REFRACT scenario would increase these savings up to 7,000 tons of CO2 emissions. And so, yeah, the 5-REFRACT implementation would mean additional 3,000, almost 4,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year. Now, in order to check, some of the things we do in LCA to check the robustness of the results is to do sensitivity and uncertainty analysis. One of the analyses that we did was to check what would happen if the Chinese industry, which is the main supplier of refractories, would shift from coal, which is their main source of energy at the moment, to natural gas. And we have seen, we are seeing that the Chinese government is promoting a shift from coal to natural gas in many industrial sectors. So we repeat all the calculations. We do the simulation again to see how this affects the results, and we see that, well, the environmental benefit is reduced a little from 3,900 to 3,600 tons of CO2, but still implementing 5-REFRACT would still make sense under this context of shifting to natural gas in China. Then we also conducted an uncertainty analysis with a Monte Carlo approach, which is a probabilistic approach where you establish an uncertainty range on each variable in your model. You give a probability distribution function, such as a normal distribution, log normal distribution, and you run the simulation to get a confidence interval. In this case, what we get is that there's a 95% confidence interval that the 5-REFRACT scenario, compared to the current situation, would be saving from 3,300 to 4,900 tons of CO2 per year. And all the simulations end up being favorable to 5-REFRACT. So in all we did 300 simulations, all of them give a better result to the 5-REFRACT scenario than to the current scenario. Other indicators that we assessed, for example, energy, we get the same. I mean, energy and CO2 are very much correlated. So in energy use, what we found is that the 5-REFRACT scenario would save 28 terajoule of primary energy from fossil sources. And then in terms of waste sent to landfill, and this is not really an indicator, an LCA indicator, it's rather an indicator, key performance indicator if you want, relevant in terms of risk of circular economy. In the 5 refractory scenario, we are saving the landfilling of 800 tons of waste. So we're not sending anything directly to the landfill from the steelworks, but since the recycling process is not perfect, we still need to landfill some materials. Okay, and this is my last slide. So what has been, is, or will be the role of the regional authorities in this project? So as you saw in the consortium, we don't have any regional authorities, but the Basque government, the regional government of the Basque country, and IOBE, which is a public company owned by the Basque government, which supports the government in environmental policy making, they expressed their interest in the project. And what they will try and do is to act as a link with other industries in the Basque region in order to see if they can replicate or implement the strategies, the procedures that have been developed in the project for this particular steelworks. And then another interesting fact is that IOBE wants to influence the European BREF document on best available techniques for production of iron steel to see if they could incorporate in this document as best available techniques or practices, those developed within this project. And then, well, the role of LCA here would be essentially to reinforce the message that there is an environment. I mean, we are doing all these things in the steel industry because they are good for the environment, and this is communicated not based only on perception of recycling being good, but backing it up with numbers, with an objective assessment that as the one we have conducted here with the life cycle assessment. So that's the role of the LCA to reinforce the message with objective claims. And this is all from my side. Thank you. And well, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Ivan. It was excellent presentation, very clear, and I would think this is a very good example of a good practice. Very comprehensive data and results. Oh, very nice. Thank you so much for sharing this project with us. So we have questions, Ivan, here from Paula. So Paula, do you want to say the questions online here? So you may
sure.
open. Oh, yes, so we can. Yeah, we have plenty of time to discuss. Yes, please.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Ivan for having accepted to join this meeting and for his very nice presentation. And yeah, since we are trying to understand what could be the role of regional authorities in such processes, I'm wondering if you think that maybe regional authorities, besides maybe offering itself to be a replicator of such processes, could also trigger other initiatives like that through setting framework conditions such as landfill taxes or maybe facilitating and putting some funds in industrial symbiosis processes or this kind of things. I'm just wondering if you have thought on this.
Yeah, I think one of the two of them are relevant. So I would first comment on the first one you mentioned, the landfilling. I think in the Basque Country, for example, they have been quite active in making it as difficult as possible for industries in keeping landfilling as a viable option. So I think they are, increasing the cost of landfilling is definitely a great encouragement for industries to start looking for recycling options. So I think this is one of the main options that public authorities have to try and to lead industries to look for alternative management options. So I guess, well, in this case in Spain, the regional governments have the competencies on waste management, and so they are the ones who are either pushing or not pushing to increase the cost of landfilling. And in this case, I'm aware that the Basque government is pushing for that, and the steel manufacturer tells you that it's definitely an important point for them to look for recycling, reuse options for these materials, even if they are already, they have a very highly developed environmental agenda. But of course, in the end, also the economics is also a very important aspect to take into account. And I guess in terms of other activities they can do, I'm aware that, for example, this project is funded by the EU, but I'm aware that this company, Sidenor, for example, has been awarded funds in the past to start developing their refractory waste management towards recycling, using funds from the Basque government. So I think the regional authorities in this case are also within their possibilities to support the local industries to improve their waste management.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good, thank you. And there's a question from Fritz, Balkau. Also, Ivan, how sensitive are the results to structural changes in the steel industry in Europe?
Structural changes. Well, I mean, in the end, you're not assessing the steel industry as such. So everything in the study, everything that has to do with steel production, other than the refractory use, is excluded because it remains the same. We are only affecting how we manage our refractory waste. The steel keeps being produced in the same way. So in principle, we keep everything exactly equivalent in terms of steel production. What is true in terms of refractories, for example, what I've seen in when reading reports and so on, is that the steel industry is getting more and more efficient in the use of refractory materials. Therefore, the amount of refractories they need per unit of steel produced is getting lower. They are getting more efficient, and so in the future, I guess, well, we see an evolution towards a lower use of refractories per unit of steel produced. And so, yeah, so depending on whether, I mean, in the end, it's a balance of how much steel is produced and how efficient they are in producing, in using the refractories. So, but since they are getting more efficient, I guess in the future we could see a lower production of refractory waste. But other than that, yeah, I don't know what other effects I could think of. In terms of refractory waste management, I don't see how structural changes could affect here the way we approach the LCA, because as I said, we are only concerned with what happens with the waste once it's generated. As I said, maybe the amounts will change in the future, maybe lower amounts if the industry keeps increasing their efficiency. But yeah, I don't know if for example, things that could affect that could be taken into account in an LCA could be, for example, if you have a steel production factory that is using electricity and starts using electricity from renewable sources, and well, you could include these kind of aspects in the LCA to see what's the effect of in your refractory waste management, the fact that the factory is using renewable energy. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question very well, but in principle, we make a picture of the industry as it is when we are assessing, when we are conducting the study, and we keep that constant in the different scenarios we assess. So yeah, we haven't looked at what could be the evolution of the steel sector in the future, other than this comment I made on the increase in efficiency in refractories.
Good, thank you. Thank you. And then we have still a question from Adam. So if you, yes, Fritz was happy for your answer, and Ivan, if you can see the questions, or I can of course read, or Adam maybe open your microphone and ask your question yourself. But yes, thank you for a great presentation. What are your reflections on plans to bring back a large-scale heavy industry to Europe? Is it an opportunity to implement innovative technologies on a large scale and apply LCA procedures? That was the question.
Okay. Well, in terms of bringing back heavy industry, well, I guess, yeah, this study was an example of the differences between heavy industries, in this case in China, as opposed to industries in Europe, for example. Everything that is produced in China uses coal. As in this case, refractories need to be heated up to really high temperatures, and this is done with coal. However, when I was looking at literature on refractories production in Europe, in general, instead of coal, natural gas was used. And so there is a difference, of course, in the environmental impact of activities that take place in Europe and in other places like China. And I guess that's also changing in the end. As I said, China is changing very rapidly. But of course, yeah, it's true that the environmental standards are not the same in Europe as they would be in China. But of course, that has a cost. And the main reason we import refractories from China is that because we are probably much more competitive than, or at least the raw materials. Maybe the refractories, some of the refractories are produced in Europe, but with raw materials that come from China. or other developing countries because they are more competitive. So bringing that back to Europe would definitely involve an environmental saving in terms of methods of production, also transports. But yeah, we would probably see a difference in cost because, of course, environmental protection has a cost, and as long as we don't include the environmental costs into the costs of production, or as long as we don't pay for externalities for environmental costs, yeah, things that are produced with a lower environmental standard will always be cheaper. And then is the second part of the question about applying LCA procedures. Well, LCA procedures can be applied to in any context, either when you are applying innovative technologies or when you are applying old technologies. And LCA is an excellent tool to highlight how things are better or worse than other alternatives that we have. So if you compare an innovative technology to an old technology, LCA allows you to see if there's a benefit of the new technology. There's an interesting comment I can make on this is that in very often in Horizon 2020 projects where we take part and our role is to assess an innovative technology that's being developed in many different sectors. It can be related to water, it can be related to construction or to biotechnology. And there's this new technology that produces this product with a different production method that's supposed to be much more sustainable. And they claim that this increased sustainability. Well, they do that based on perception. And then our role is with the LCA to back that up with numbers. Very often what we see is that new technologies, when we assess them at a very early stage of development, they usually don't have that level of sustainability that they think, because very often you are asked to compare a new technology that's maybe being implemented at a pilot scale. You could have to compare that with a technology that maybe has been there for decades or centuries and has had like a lot of time to develop and mature and get mature. So you're comparing something that's very new and immature with something that's very mature. And very often LCA, if you want, you can use the LCA to kill the new technology because it looks worse at this early stage. So you have to be careful of what you do with LCA. You have to be aware of the uncertainties. If you assess something that is very new and you do it based on results that someone has obtained in a laboratory instead of in a full industrial plant, then your process might be very inefficient. So you have to keep that take that into account when applying the LCA so that LCA is not used to kill innovation. So that was a side comment on the issues of using LCA in new technologies.
Excellent, Ivan. Thank you. Important points. I put my video here. Okay, thank you. It's been a nice day. Good selection of excellent presentations. So and if there's any questions, I can't see at the moment any additional comments. So
maybe Pekka, sorry, if I may, just a final comment.
Oh, sure.
Because I'm wondering if Ivan has some ideas about the role of local authorities when it comes to LCA, but especially how often he works with local authorities and what is your feeling about working with local authorities? Because I think that in industry is quite prepared to receive such amount of data, but maybe local authorities don't have much information on this. So what's your feeling in general? Thanks.
Yeah, I would say we have much less in our company. We work with public agencies. We have some work with local authorities. I'm thinking that we have had some, not directly, I have not been indirectly involved, but for example, we have had some consultancy work with municipalities in Sweden, if I'm not wrong, where they were asking us to calculate the carbon footprint of their activities. But it's true that we work much more with industries and with industry associations and so on, and in research projects where you have companies and universities working together, than with local authorities. Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's partly based on, I don't know, maybe lack of resources, or maybe it's not very high on their agenda to do this kind of assessments, or maybe because the kind of policies they can implement they think are not relevant for such a sophisticated tool. I don't know, but it's true that waste is, besides this example I was mentioning in Sweden, in my own experience, waste is probably one of the areas where I have been involved with local authorities in applying LCA. I have done that, for example, in Spain several times. Actually, my first LCA, one of my first LCAs was about urban solid waste planning, management planning, also in the Basque region. But it was, yeah, it was not a local municipality asking for that, but a kind of the regional part of the Basque territory, and the province of Guipúzcoa was asking for an LCA of the plan they were developing. So I would say, yeah, it's true that definitely LCA is not widely used in the local level, but waste is probably one of the areas where they seem to be more aware of this tool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Ivan. And I think that we will hear in the webinar on Thursday also an example of related to LCA and waste management. There's a presentation of a waste management company where also LCA has been utilized to optimize their collection systems. So this is one example from Finland coming. Thank you so much, Ivan. It's been a pleasure to.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
And if we don't have any other comments now for this, so this session is coming to an end, and we will continue tomorrow. And these presentations, what we heard today, and the next ones also tomorrow and on Thursday will be recorded, and they will be available to our project website later on. So if you missed any parts of today's presentations or so you can go back to those later. So okay, so I will I will say now, thank you much everybody for coming and sharing your time with us. And we will continue then tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Good day, everybody.